I call it the cycle of batting despair that 99% of all batsmen get sucked into is they derive their confidence from their scores.
So Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram. On the channel again, we got Gio Colussi. Gio, how's it all going, man?
Yeah, brilliant. And it's always good to be a guest of yours and to talk some batting and cricket.
No, I appreciate your time. I know you've had a busy few months. So Gio, as regular viewers of the channel know that you're a batting performance specialist coach. You recently wrote a post which caught my attention. You had a picture of Marnus Labuschagne, and the caption read, "When confidence is built on scores, a few bad innings can destroy your career." Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Uh, but I saw an article, Cricket Australia posted something about, how he's going about his turnaround to get his test career back on track. And the first thing that stood out to me was that he said that he probably got sucked into doing too much technical tinkering. And then a little bit further in the article, he spoke about confidence and scores. And those are the two main things that I focus on with players. And I was like, it's always nice to see, and it's not nice for the player who's going through it, but batting is batting. And if you break it down to its core principles, shots are shots, and everybody's emotions are the same. So it doesn't matter what level you're playing at, it's just executing at a different skill level or a different intensity. But the cycle, I call it the cycle of batting despair, that 99% of all batsmen get sucked into is they derive their confidence from their scores. So when you get a run of low scores and they're going to come, how do you handle it? But if you've lost confidence, the conventional coaching model is, well, there's got to be something technical that we can fix so we can start getting scores again. And then the tinkering and the chopping and the changing starts. And the problem with that is that batting should be an unconscious act. So when we're out in the middle, everybody always says you've got to trust your instincts, play on instinct or play with freedom. You can't do that when your confidence is low because you're deriving it from scores. And then it makes it even harder to do that when we start making technical changes and trying to implement new things into our game. When we're low on confidence, it makes it even harder to see and react. And that's where prolonged form slumps come in. So he hasn't scored, I think it's more than 50 innings. He's got one test 100. He's averaged 30 since the end of 2022. That's something that I would call a prolonged form slump. And everything that he said in the article lined up with what I believe causes prolonged form slumps.
You mentioned 99% of batters almost go through that. You hear also professionals say, you got to trust the process of your game, etc. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, so again, there's all these cliches and sort of phrases that get thrown around. So, trust the process or trust your process. But if you don't know what that process is, the second you get a series of low scores, like he did, the tinkering starts. So something that might have worked for you really well, but you didn't understand why it worked for you, gets thrown out the window and you start trying to implement all these new game plans, technical changes while your confidence is low. So what I do with players is completely different. We do the mind first. Okay. What impact do our thoughts and emotions have on our ability to execute our skills to the best of our ability? Two, what are the fundamentals of batting? We've touched on this in a previous chat, but cricket is actually quite ridiculous in that there are no globally agreed upon fundamentals of batting. So you could be working with the same coach you've worked with your entire life, and he wouldn't have noticed something like perhaps you've got quite a big arc on your bat path. So your bat comes round from gully. Now you get a series of low scores, and he looks and he goes, oh, I know what the problem is. Your bat's coming from gully. We're going to straighten that up. And now you start tinkering with your bat flow, which throws all your timing out of sync even further. So getting players clarity in what are the fundamentals, but fundamentals should allow for player individuality. So it's about understanding the principle and how it affects you or how you execute that principle, because everybody's going to do it slightly differently. And if you understand your fundamentals and you know how to train them and you know how to measure them, you'll be far less likely to be making unnecessary changes, reacting to low scores.
Do you think
So those are sort of the first two things that we do, like what impact are your thoughts and emotions having on your ability to execute your skills? And then what are the fundamentals of batting? How do you train them? How do you execute them? And then how do you fix things if your measurable tells you that something's slightly off?
that a lot of batters almost don't know what their actual strengths are? And as you say, when they do go through a period of low scores, they do find that hard to pinpoint, and they start, as you say, making all these other tinkers that throw their whole game off.
For sure. And I don't think necessarily your strengths, because a lot of guys can be really clear, okay, these are the shots that I'm good at and these ones I'm not so good at. So I've built a game plan to score around that, or I've got a strategy to score around that. The other thing that can sort of derail you is forgetting about your strengths, because now you've reached a certain level of performance and you convince yourself, well, okay, and it's natural. We want to improve, we want to keep working on our game, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because you've now decided that, okay, well, I'm weak in these areas. I'm going to put all my energy on trying to turn a weakness into a strength. But coming back to fundamentals again, if your fundamentals are sound, you won't have weaknesses in different shots. Because if your fundamentals are sound, you can score freely around the wicket. So generally what tends to happen is if a guy say, I'm a really good offside player, but I struggle to access the leg side, they'll go into the nets and they'll work with their coach on improving the leg side play. But often what happens is the reason that they couldn't access the leg side is because there was a flaw in their fundamentals. So they make an adjustment, which now opens up the leg side, and this happens very often. All of a sudden, a weakness becomes a strength and a strength becomes a weakness because the adjustment that's been made was fundamentally flawed. So you're giving something away to gain something, but previously you had something, but you couldn't do something else because there was a flaw in your fundamentals. So it's
And
getting crystal clear on those things.
and is that what you're talking about in terms of getting that cycle of batting despair? Batting despair is quite a strong phrase.
It is. Well, everybody's on this roller coaster. So basically, it is you're going to your season, pretty much, you get a series of low scores, your confidence drops, and then the tinkering starts. And you make some changes. Maybe it feels good. And then you get a score, and then you get another series of low scores. You make more changes. Then maybe you don't get a score and you just keep chopping and changing and chopping and changing. So you're always reacting to your scores and reacting to your dismissals. And because you haven't learned how to detach from your scores, you're always on this emotional roller coaster, as opposed to being able to go, right, well, I've got a process to measure if I executed my match fundamentals to the best of my ability. And if I did that, I had a great innings, regardless of how many runs I scored. That's the first thing, being able to detach from your scores. But if you don't have clarity and trust in your ability to execute your match processes, which is going to require you to be present. So, how do I manage the thoughts, emotions, and distractions that are derailing me on match day? Once you've got that in place, then the other part is your training. How am I? What are my fundamentals? How do I train them and how do I measure them? So, the second you can detach from scores and then develop clarity and trust in those two areas, the mental side of your game, how am I going to be present? And then are my fundamentals good? And am I training them regularly, giving myself feedback? And do I know how to fix things? Once you do that, scores don't impact your confidence. And then you get off that roller coaster. You exit the cycle because you're no longer reacting to low scores and you're no longer seeking unnecessary technical changes because you're chasing scores.
Do you think it's dangerous for some coaches to focus solely on technique?
Well, it's the way that all of us coaches are conditioned to coach. And the funny thing is, it's one of the, when did I start to realize this? As a player, I had a really good technique. I used to hit cheapest thousands of balls a week. And, even a mate said to me, had an incredibly successful playing career as a professional, would say, I can't believe that you're a pro, that you're not a pro with your technique. But I couldn't shut my mind off. I'm a thinker. So I was always overthinking, always overanalyzing. If something was going well, I'd stop and I'd think, what are you doing today to make it go so well? And then out. And the frustrating thing for me was most of the scores that I would get were when I actually didn't feel good.
So you weren't
So
overthinking.
I was an overthinker. And just like everybody thought, well, what's the solution? I got to hit more balls. But you're hitting balls and you think you know what you're doing, but you're actually just hitting balls until something feels good and you think that you found something. And then that maybe that sees you, you feel good for a week or two. And then all of a sudden that stops feeling good too. And now you're not hitting balls well again. And it's because you're always relying on one small thing to make you feel good. And you're always reacting to things versus you knowing what you need to do or you knowing what's going to give you the best chance of hitting balls well and the way that you want to. So, and that was it. And I worked with coaches, and they'd always come to you and go, oh, no, you know what it is? It's this. Oh, have you considered trying a trigger movement? I said, well, I never had one, but I mean, last season I scored runs without one, but shit, I'll give that a try because I want to score runs. So, and then going and doing all of my different coaching levels, I'll never forget going and doing my level 3, and I was so underwhelmed by what happened there over the 3 days that we were in Pretoria. And I was just thinking, there's got to be more than this. Like the the mindset module was basically about identifying people's personality types so that you knew who would room best with whom. And I was like thinking, there's got to be more than this. So that sort of really got me to start looking into, okay, what's the missing piece here? Like I'm working with a lot of young players, I'm helping them develop. Everybody's saying how good they look. I was always told how good I looked, but the conversions weren't coming. And I was seeing it in the players that I was working with back then, and obviously in myself. So I stopped playing shortly after that. So unfortunately, I didn't figure it out for myself. But between 2012 and sort of like 2018, I really started experimenting and seeing, right, what's wrong with, all this technique-based coaching that I'm doing. How can I simplify this for players from a skills perspective so that they feel confident going to games? We can take all this technical clutter away. And then what is that missing piece of, why are people not converting? Why couldn't I convert consistently? And then sort of in 2018, things sort of all just came together. A lot of my clients started, I had 3 guys score back-to-back hundreds in the same week, from an under 13 to an under 17 to somebody who was um, just come back to South Africa to pursue a career as a professional. And then I was working with a coach myself, and he said, okay, why have 4 of your clients scored 1700s in a summer? I said, well, they work with me. And he said, well, that's not good enough. People want to know how. So you've got to sit down and you've got to piece together, what are you doing with these guys, or what have you changed that's resulted in these outcomes? And that's pretty much where my 3-step process was born.
Yeah, we'll dive into the three-step process shortly. If just quickly before we do that, say a Joe Root, you hear a lot about how many balls he hits. A lot of people say that. A lot of commentators say that. A lot of his fellow teammates say he hits so many balls. He's the last one in the net. He has Steve Smith. The story is about he can't sleep at night and he's just shadow batting in the mirror. Is that more? Are you saying because those two are arguably two of the best test batters in the world currently? Are you saying that what they're doing is actually training their mind, not necessarily like focusing on technique there?
Of course, you've got to look, if you want to score runs, you've got to have good fundamentals, and good fundamentals translate into a good technique. Okay, but having a good technique or having the perfect technique doesn't guarantee runs because you need to know how to score runs. And it was really interesting, I think, in this last the series with India, there was an interview with Joe Root where he spoke about, they said, what is the reason behind your numbers over the last few years? And he said, I stopped being, I'm paraphrasing here, but the gist of what he said was, I stopped focusing so much on technique. Now, obviously, he's got a good technique because he put the hours in and he's had good coaching and he's put good fundamentals in place and he understands what works for him. But the thing that's made the biggest change for him is he said was starting to figure out how to go about scoring on any given day. Because there's going to be days where things don't feel good, but you've got to figure out a way to score. And by shifting his focus more towards that rather than focusing only on technique, well, that now comes more into, the mind. Okay, what am I doing? How do I score? How do I stack the odds more in my favor? And that's where you see really, really big gains in performance.
And what about the Steve Smith example?
Oh, again, if you look at all the best players in any sport, if you speak to the most consistent performers, if you speak to their coaches, they're the first to training and the last to leave. But the difference between them and everybody else, besides having that discipline, is that they're training with purpose. They know what they're doing. They're not aimlessly hitting balls. They might have, when you're younger, you're experimenting, you're trying new things. But when they figure something out, they hold on to it and they don't just throw it out for no reason. Okay. But that actually brings, you mentioned Steve Smith, something interesting. He changed his setup not long ago, but he's reverted back to it. So again, it just shows you that batting is batting. And whether you're the best batsman in the world or, you're a kid playing under 11 B team cricket, shots are shots and emotions are emotions. So you're just playing at a different level of skill. But he'd scored, what did he score? 774 runs in the 2019 Ashes, averaged 110. Okay. And then I think it was about 2 years later, all of a sudden, everybody was talking about his changed his stance to being side on. And the reason he gave for that was that he felt he wasn't accessing balls outside off stump as well as he'd liked, and he was playing at a lot of balls that he shouldn't be playing at. But the really interesting thing is, if you go back and you look at him bat when he was scoring runs for fun in the 2019 Ashes, he accessed the offside beautifully from his open setup. So was it the setup? And the questions that I would be asking a player is, well, could you do it previously? Let's look at you playing at your very best. And I doubt he's ever played better than 774 runs um, at a batting average of 110. Well, if you could do it then, is it really because of your setup? What mental state are you in? What's going on in your life outside of cricket? Where your confidence levels at? Because your mindset has as much, if not even more of an impact on your ability to move with purpose than your physical setup.
Yeah, very interesting. And you said that you state that you can permanently exit this cycle of batting despair with your simple three steps. Number one, unlock batting prowess. Should we just dive a little? I know we mentioned it at the top there, but should we just dive a little bit deeper into number one?
Yeah, so I mean, I call it batting prowess. It's the ability to sum up the match situation, devise a plan, and execute it. What's going to prevent you from executing your plans and executing your skills, thoughts, emotions, and distractions? So, how do we deal with all the noise? How do we get all of that mental clutter out of your head so that you can be calm, relaxed, and allow yourself to see and react to the ball? When you do that, you play on instinct, and that's when the best version of you comes out to play.
How easy is that though? Say if you take not a professional player, but a young up and comer, say a lot has been said of this one player, people saying he's going to be the next Virat Kohli, whatever. You got pressure from commentators, you got pressure from crowd, you got pressure from friends, from family, all that noise getting in your head. Then couple with that, say you get a couple of low scores. How hard or how easy is it to detach that emotions, those distractions?
Well, the first thing is, again, you've got to have a good grounding. So I think a recent example of that would be Deval Brevis, the baby AB. The amount of unnecessary pressure in inverted commas that was put on that kid because people wanted to do this whole big marketing campaign, for an IPL franchise that they've signed a new AB. Okay. That's why you want to put these habits in place young. So thoughts are thoughts, distractions are distractions. So you're just dealing with different distractions at different levels. So when you're saying people, the press are talking about stuff, if you know who you are as a person, if you know what value you're bringing to a team, then you shouldn't be worrying about what other people think or say about you. If you've got consistent training processes that you know, if I do these things consistently, they give me the best chance of being successful. And then if you know that you've got a process that's going to help you be present when you're out in the middle, thoughts and emotions are going to come. We're human beings, they're natural. They come into your head. You don't know where it came from, but how quickly can you catch it? And how quickly can you bring yourself back to the present moment? If you can do those things, all of this other stuff that you've just mentioned, it's just external noise. And what it basically comes down to is what are the things I can control and what are the things that I can't control? And I only put my energy, and we want players, you want to only be putting your energy into things that are within your sphere of influence or your control. So what the press can't control it. Could be the nicest bloke in the world, but some writer thinks that I come across as being arrogant because I don't speak a lot and I'm short with my answers. Well, that's his problem. It's not my problem. I know who I am. I know what my values are. I know what my beliefs are. I know what I'm living every day. I don't care what other people think about me. So it's about putting, these are all things that can be put in place.
And it's the key then, you mentioned playing on instinct. You touched on the fact of how in other sports, you hear it a lot in the UK, soccer's massive, obviously. You hear the best players, they say they play off the cuff, play off instinct. Is that what you're saying? If you can almost be in that
Well,
present moment and play off instinct, that's the key?
well, instinct is your innate intelligence. So batting is an unconscious act. There is not enough time for you to consciously think about all the different things that are going to happen in the, if you're playing at an elite level, half a second that you've got. So that's what playing on instinct means, allowing yourself, your innate intelligence, to see and react to the ball. And like I said earlier, what's going to prevent you from doing that is if you're not present. So if you're dwelling on the previous ball, or you're dwelling from a past inning, something negative from a past innings, or if you're getting ahead of yourself and you're worrying about what might happen in the future if you get out for a low score, you're worrying about what they might do. Again, you've got to be able to bring yourself back to the present moment and focus on the things that are within your control. Because the minute you start allowing yourself to bleed energy to things that are outside of your control, well, guess what? You're no longer in control of what's happening because you're wasting energy on things you've got no influence over. But the faster you can catch yourself when that happens and bring yourself back to being present, and being present means allowing yourself to have a clear mind and see and react to the ball. The more consistently you can do that, the better you're going to see the ball. You're going to move with purpose. You're going to make better quality decisions, which is going to stack up to what? If you're making better decisions, you're executing your skills at a higher standard than if you're not present.
And then number two, you talk about training the fundamentals. You mentioned a lot the word fundamentals a lot in this chat. Obviously, we've had a discussion about this on a previous video, but for those that haven't watched it or don't fully understand what fundamentals are in when it comes to batting, can you just expand on it a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's a few core things that I've looked at players and said, right, well, if you do these things consistently, you can bat. All right, so I'll run through them quickly. Number one, everybody always forgets this. The second you're in a slump, the last thing you are thinking about at the crease is to see the ball because you're thinking about your new stance, when must you implement your new trigger movement, your hands don't feel right because you've changed your grip. All of these things, all that technical clutter is preventing you from being present. So number one principle, see the ball. And any pro that you talk to who comes out of a slump, when they always ask, so what was the fix for you? It's almost always that some ex-player was speaking to them and said, hey, are you remembering to watch the ball? And they go, oh, no, I'm thinking about getting dropped. I'm worried about my place in the team. Is my career going to be over? How am I holding the bat? Where's my bat coming from? All these things prevent you from seeing the ball. So one, see the ball. Two, your setup. needs to allow you, sorry, two, your grip. So one is see the ball, two is your grip. Your grip must allow you to present the full face of the bat through the ball for all strokes. If you can do that, there's no reason to be changing your grip because we want to get a full face through the ball consistently. That's how simple batting is. So if you understand that and you understand your grip and you can do that, you don't need to change your grip because you got three low scores and some coach starts telling you that you're playing with too much bottom hand. But bottom hand often manifests as early contact, but we'll get into that a little bit later as we get into these fundamentals. So your grip, if you could consistently present the full face through the ball, no need to change your grip. Your setup must allow you to move forwards and backwards with purpose. That's it. If you can move forwards and backwards with purpose, you don't need to change your setup. And these fundamentals that I'm sharing with you allow for player individuality. We're not trying to force everybody into a cookie cutter mold where you got one coach who's saying, no, batting actually is a chest on game. It's not a chest on game. I'll explain why when we get to point five. Okay. But Steve Smith sets up open, yes, but when he accesses the ball, he accesses the ball from a side on position because he coils. You have to coil. Some players set up side on, others set up chest, completely chest on. More shift Chandapur. Doesn't matter how you set up, as long as you can move. By the time the ball is released, you can move forwards and backwards with purpose. So now, takes away pushing everybody into this mold where I think if we look at the modern day batters today, to me, compared to the early 2000s, the late 90s, the guys today look like mechanical robots. They just look to me far more graceful, far more elegant, far more fluency and flow back then versus now. And there's a reason for it because people have come into this mold where you have to have a back and a cross trigger. Your bat's not allowed to have a big arc on it, which is all nonsense as we get into the rest of these fundamentals. But one, see the ball. Two, your grip. Consistent bat face through the ball. Three, your setup. Forwards and backwards with purpose. Four, balance. Move from a balanced position to a balanced position. Simple. Okay, five. Align yourself to the ball by coiling. All right, this is where batting becomes a side-on game. Because if you want to hit a ball, you've got to store energy. To store energy, we've got to turn. You can't store energy chest on. So if you look at every single player, when they're accessing the ball, whether they're moving forwards or backwards, they've coiled. How they coil and how they swing the bat, again, is different. Some people have a small path where they go sort of straight back and straight down. Those would be your players who look a little bit more mechanical. And then your guys who are a lot more free-flowing have got bigger arcs. Like your Steve Smiths, his bat comes from point. Even another one that people aren't aware of really is Gio Colussi. His bat came from gully. But you've got coaches out there who'll say if your bat comes from gully, you're going to play across the straight ball all the time and you're going to get bowled, you're going to get LBW a lot. Well, Gio Colussi averaged, 57 in Test cricket. How many runs did he score? That's not true. Steve Smith's coming from gully, Donald Bradman, big rotation. And interestingly enough, the players who have the biggest rotations tend to have the highest Test batting averages. But,
Should
you know, so again, you've got to align yourself, turning your shoulder, coiling. How you get there, some will have a big arc, others will have a smaller arc. But as long as you are coiling, you're storing energy, you can move forwards and backwards, you can execute your shots, you can swing the bat through the ball. 6 is unweighting. But unweighting is a byproduct of you unweighting your body to move. So we want to move from a balanced position to a balanced position. And then as we start to coil, we unweight our body, which allows us to then move. And then at the top of the bat swing, the bat becomes unweighted, where the bat is in a weightless position, which the toe gets vertical. But again, everybody swings the bat differently. So some people might be just short of vertical. Some players go a little bit past the perpendicular, which isn't ideal. But all of these things have got, knock-on consequences. Some players will have the face slightly more open, others a little bit more closed. But again, that's the fundamental principle is at the top of the bat swing, prior to commencing a stroke, we want to get the toe close to vertical. How it gets there, everybody's different. Is it going to be open or slightly closed, depending on where you're hitting the ball, is also going to impact what angle the bat is at. But the principle is toe gets vertical, bat's weightless, and then the bat comes down on the ball. That's how you generate lag, bat speed, but it also allows you to defend soft and steep on the ball and play the original line. If you don't coil, you play with your hands. So if your shoulders stay level and you bat from here, the minute the ball deviates, you push off the line with your hands and you chase balls that you shouldn't be chasing. But if you're in a positive frame of mind and you're coiling, it's like putting in golf. You don't putt with your hands, you turn your shoulders and your arms follow the line that you created with your body. Same thing when you're batting. We are aligning ourselves to the ball for playing straight bat shot. If I've coiled, now the bat releases along the line that I've created with my body. So I play the original line. If it deviates and it hits the outside half, okay. If it's got to deviate a lot to beat a full bat face versus me chasing it. So again, you're stacking the odds in your favor. I play the original line. If it deviates and beats me, well, I didn't chase it. And if it deviates just enough to get an edge, well bowled. And then the final one, after unweighting, is contact points. All the best players play close to their body, under their eyes. So if you're playing straight bat shots, how close are you hitting the ball into the ground? And if you're playing cross bat shots, if you're pulling, it's in line with your eyes. So you're always making contact in line with your eyes, whether it's here underneath them, or if you're playing cross bat, it's in front of them. And if you're cutting and it's alongside of you again, it's in line with your eyes. And if you do those 7 things consistently, you're golden. You don't have to make unnecessary changes. So if you know these 7 things and you're checking that you're doing them well, bad habits can't creep into your game.
So then you talk about these fundamentals. If an outsider looking in heard you talk about grit, unweighting bat, contact point, etc. A, how do you work on these fundamentals, say if you're like a junior player? And some may say, is that technique based or is it mental based or is it framed in a different way?
Yeah, so coming back to these fundamentals, okay, they're pretty easy to train, okay, because these are going to inform every single shot that you play. So, I know there's a drill. A lot of people do this drill, but in my opinion, when I see a lot of people doing it, they do it wrong. And you would have seen lots of international players do it. They all talk about it. I call it a point of contact drill. Other people call it a no feet drill, where you're just standing and not moving your feet. But if you don't do all of these things that I've just spoken about in that drill, the ball doesn't go where you intend it to. Okay, so if you do this drill correctly, you're balanced, you're coiling, you're presenting a full face of the bat through the ball, hitting the ball nice and close into the ground, you're training good habits. And then these things filter through into all of your other strokes. Regarding, yeah, I mean, it really is, it's this simple, but people make it overcomplicated by focusing on all the moving pieces in a sequence. And if you're going to ask a player to think about, while he's training, a piece in a moving sequence, how is that grounded in reality of what we want to be happening when we're batting? Because batting is supposed to be unconscious. And if I'm consistently asking you to engage your conscious mind whilst I'm training you, you're training a bad habit. Because come match day, oh no, okay, just shut all of that off and go out there and watch the ball. Well, how do you do that if whenever I'm working with my coach, he's bombarding me with all of this technical information after each ball? And I mean, I've recently started playing tennis and I enlisted, obviously, I believe in coaching. So I've worked with a number of different tennis coaches. And then just out of, what's the right word? Logistically, it's easier for me. There's a tennis club down the road from where I live. That's where I'm a tennis member. Yes, I'm a member at Western Province Cricket Club, but that's not close to home. So I've had some lessons at Province, and I got this coach, and he was just like, After every single shot, he was giving me a different piece of information. But he's in his 60s. He was playing first league tennis up until a season or two ago. I was like, this man has got an immense amount of knowledge. It's up to me to figure out how to get it out of him in a way that, and I've started using my own process. So I've looked at my fundamentals, same principles apply to tennis. I've just said, look, this is great. You've got an immense amount of knowledge. That's why I'm coming to you. But can you please only give me one thing to focus on at a time? And you're going to have to help me figure out what it is because I don't know tennis like you do. You're the brains here. But what is the message that I can send? What's the outcome that I'm looking for that I can put into my mind? And if I get out the way and I let my innate intelligence do what I've asked it to do, my body will react the way that you want it to react instead of giving me after every single ball. And this is what the same thing happens in cricket. You get every single ball's a new thing. Oh no, it's the elbow. No, it's the foot. No, it's the head. Oh no, your elbow's coming around. Or I'm seeing too much right shoulder now. All of these things, they're all happening in the sequence. So we've got to figure out how can we, what message can you send that your body will react? And our bodies are incredibly intelligent. If you send the right message, your body will react the way that you want it to.
Do you think players and sometimes have to take a little bit more responsibility and almost understand what they want from a coach?
Completely. It's a discussion I've had with, you know, guys have gone into professional setups and then they sort of like taper back on the work that you do because now they're busy. Okay. They're really, really busy training hard with the team. And then it goes through and it's, oh man, can we get together, do a session, or things aren't going well, I'm in a slump. Are you doing your point of contact training? No. Are you running your simple after each match? No. Okay, well, those are the two things that allow you to detach from your scores, allow you to not make unnecessary technical tweaks, and you're not doing them. No, well, I've got to fit in with what the team wants to do. But at the end of the day, it's their career, it's your career. And it doesn't matter where you're playing, whether you're a pro, whether you're a clubby, whether you're playing social Sunday stuff, you want to do well in your team. So who's responsible for that? Well, you are. So coming back to what you said earlier again about the best in the world, they put in the most time, but they are the most specific about what they're doing. And even they're meticulous is the right word. And they're not just meticulous with how they go about their training, how they go about preparing. They're meticulous with their kit too. They recently, I think Stuart Broad took everybody through the England dressing room. And you see the messy areas, and then you see Joe Root's area. Everything's lined up, everything's neat, it's meticulous. So, if you want to become really, really good at your level or where you're playing, you need to become disciplined and meticulous with what you're doing, forming the right habits and being disciplined by sticking with them. So, yes, to answer your question, guys do go away from, you know, they need to go to their coaches and say, hey, coach, part of the reason why I've been able to perform the way that I have, that has got me to this point, is I've got a trading routine. Can you please help me maintain that routine within your structures?
Do you think it's almost like a danger in modern cricket, given the amount of like franchise teams? Say you've got say a player in England, you've got your county coach. Say if they're good enough then to play at international level, you then go into the England setup. If you're then good enough to play white ball cricket, you're playing IPL, you're playing SA20, CPL, Big Bash, etc., etc. There's a lot of coaches there. If you take it down a level, if you're like a schoolboy, you've got your university coach, county, age group coach, etc. Is it almost like a danger with there being like so much cricket around the world and so many
Well,
coaches getting involved?
I think there is quite a big difference between at the professional level now. I think a lot of it is guys are loath to come in and start giving advice to a player who they've just met. Okay, so there's a difference there. If you're bouncing around on the T20 circuit, 100%, that is your career. So you're responsible for your own preparation, and setups will allow for that. They'll be like, you know what I mean? Some guys don't like to hit a lot of balls, other guys like to. All of that sort of stuff is catered for, but the interventions there would be far less than at what you're talking about, say, a university level or a club level or a school level. Okay, which makes it even more important for you to know your fundamentals and understand them, because you're going to get all of this well-meaning and well-intended information, but it can become overwhelming. And then the other side of it is, well, if somebody is telling you something and you know that it's not relevant to you, then the other side of that, unfortunately, is, well, is he going to hold it against me? So maybe I just better do it to appease him, because maybe he'll think I've got a bad attitude if I don't take it on board. But if you can filter through the noise and decipher, okay, that means that this fundamental is off, or that doesn't mean that, but because I understand my fundamentals, I know what that really means. I know how to fix it. And at the end of the day, as long as you're performing, you're going to get picked. But the problem comes where guys are scared of not getting picked and then they start to appease. So then there's sort of like a middle ground, which would be, say, a player who's only playing for one professional team. And again, this is not a blanket statement, but I've seen it happen very often. The interventions there are almost non-existent. So where I've had players who I've worked with, and then they come back to me in the off season, and they've formed, I mean, like when we're talking about, fundamentals, okay, everybody knows that a fundamental back foot play you cover off stump. There's a reason that there are front foot and back foot shots, and there's a reason, you know, that they exist. But when a player comes out and is playing every single short ball standing up on the front foot, and you ask, okay, you've just played an entire season of cricket. Did nobody mention this to you? No. So, that's where I think also there's been a little bit of a, not a misunderstanding, an abuse of there's a phrase that was going around, find your own way, which which is the best way. But you as a coach, it's your responsibility to guide a player through questions to figure out his way to execute a specific skill, not be lazy and just go figure it out, find a way, or not say anything, because if I don't try and make interventions, then I'm not responsible if things go poorly. So, there's a fine balance. You're going to get a whole variety of, it's the same as you get batsmen on different spectrums. Guys will swing the bat differently. Guys will move differently. You're going to have different coaches and you're going to come in contact with all these different things. But the best way to handle it is to understand your fundamentals and make sure that you're not relying on your scores for your confidence.
Very interesting. And then number three, detach from scores. Again, we've touched on it at the start of this chat, but do you want to go a bit deeper into that? You talk about develop belief that compounds week on week, independent of the scorebook.
Yes. So again, we don't want to be looking at it and going, well, I've had a good innings because I scored X number of runs today. We rather want to be looking at it in a way that goes, well, just as an example, all right, did I have a plan out there today? Once I got out to the middle, did I assess the conditions, the match situation, what fields were being set, and did I devise a plan? If the answer is yes, okay, I ticked the box today. Then the next thing will be, well, how well did I execute my plan? And if you did it to the best of your ability and you tick the box, okay, well, now you're building your confidence, regardless of the number that's in the book. Because you could have a great innings and only score 2 runs because your partner ran you out. called you and sent you back. You could have a great innings to get to 7 runs until you got an inside edge onto your pad and umpire stuck your LBW. And you could be having a great innings, but you got out in really, really tricky conditions and you played forward at a ball that pitched off stump but deviated just enough, took a feather through to the keeper, and you're on your bike for naught. But until then, you were moving well, you were seeing the ball well, you were leaving well, you were defending well, you hadn't been given anything to hit yet. But now, if I am in the mindset that my scores determine the form that I'm in, well, now I'm in a slump. I've had 3 low scores in a row below 10, including a duck. Okay, now oh shit, what do I need to change? What do I need to fix? I got to get a score. So if you can start measuring in the way that I've just described as one example, okay, then you don't care about your scores. You go, hey, yep, I did that today. Great. I did that. Yes. Could I have done that a little better? Yes. Okay, why didn't I execute that to the best of my ability? Oh, geez, so that guy was actually bowling pretty quick. And then these oaks told me I've had a few low scores. And then this oak said I'm shit. And he's heard I'm going to get dropped. And all this, oh, that's why. What happened there? Okay, I was allowing myself to leave the present moment and get sucked into all these things outside of my control. That's why I didn't execute that specific match measurable. Okay, great. Well, now what? How am I going to handle that the next time it happens?
Is it so important
Now,
then to
again,
have
if you put
that?
in
Is it so important then, sorry to jump in, is it so important to have that support structure around you when it comes to the like a scenario where you get a load of low scores?
100% because it's easy to get sucked in. You see it. Manus got sucked in, tinkering, chopping and changing constantly. Now he's like, okay, well, I'm going to stop doing that. Okay, but it still doesn't deal with the thing that started it all, which is when you've had a few low scores and your confidence is low, your confidence shouldn't be getting low because of your scores. You should be creating and building your own confidence through how well you execute your processes. And those 3 things are your, your mindset. Have I got a process to help me remain present while I'm out in the middle? How am I going to manage the thoughts, emotions, and distractions that are going to prevent me from executing my skills to the best of my ability? 2, your preparation, your training. Am I training and measuring my fundamentals? Because if you're not measuring what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know at what level you're executing. So you'll just go from net to net. Oh, that today felt great. Oh, today didn't feel great, but you don't know why. And we're humans. We're going to go ups and downs. We can't execute our skills at 100% all the time. We'll be lucky if we can execute our skills at 80% of our capacity all the time, which comes back to what Joe Root was saying. Okay, well, I'm never going to be at that 100%. How do I work with what's happening on the day to execute my skills to the best of my ability with everything else that's going on? And figure out a way and stack the odds in my favor so that I can actually score today. And if you can do those 2 things, and then you've got a post-match reflection process that's built your confidence in the way that I just described, well, then you know that there's no such thing as a form slump, because a form slump is a construct of your mind. And you're not going to be making unnecessary tinkering when you get low scores. And you're not going to be standing at the crease overloading yourself with new technical adjustments because you're chasing a score. You're going to go, well, I know last week's last week, and this week's a new opportunity. My preparation was great. I'm hitting the ball well. I know how to remain present. I'm not getting sucked into things that are outside of my control. Well, now you're giving yourself a really, really good chance of being successful on that day. And even then, you could do all of those things. And like I just touched on, your partner could run you out. You could get an absolute cracker of a delivery. You could get a shit umpiring decision. The wicket could be appalling. There's so many things outside of your control that are working against you. But if you know what's outside of your control and you're just in your little bubble and you're just continually putting energy and focus into what you can control, your confidence will stay on a pretty even keel. It is going to go up and down a bit. Things outside of cricket are going to impact how you're feeling about life and yourself. But again, the more self-aware you can become around the impact of where these thoughts and emotions take you, how quickly you can identify, can I control that or not? And then if I can't, I let it go. And if I can, okay, how do I bring myself back to the now? Because that ball's coming in the now. And if you do that, you're going to become a far more consistent run scorer because you're consistent in how you think, consistent in how you train, and consistent in how you play your matches. And if you do that, consistent, your performance starts to go like this.
Well, that's fascinating stuff, Gio, as always. If someone wants to go a bit deeper with you, interact with you, one-on-one, etc., how can they get in touch with you?
Simplebatting.com. Also, obviously, on Instagram at the batting specialist. I'm also on Facebook, Gio Colussi, LinkedIn, Gio Colussi. It's one U, two S's, one L.
Yeah, I'll put all the links in the description of this video. But Gio, fascinating, and thank you very much for coming on again.